Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to be with you this morning. It's wonderful to see some faces I haven't seen as much over the summer returning this morning. You heard we're having food after, didn't you? Did you hear that? Is that why you're here? I'm the Reverend William Levewood. I'm the minister here at Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church, and my pronouns are he and him. As we begin our service, I invite you to silence your phone if you're in person. Close the other windows on your computer if you're at home, and take a deep breath as we center ourselves for worship. We open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and justice with the people of this land who live on and their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomac Indian tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Jen Carlson. My pronouns are she and her, and I am your worship associate today. I hope you got a name tag. And speaking of name tags, I know 2 weeks ago I said I had lost mine over COVID, so Olivia Tuggle actually made me a Captain Picard name tag. So shout out to Olivia Tuggle for being amazing. It's also a great auction item in case anyone, is thinking of something to donate. If you have these talents, it's a great auction item. If you're on Zoom, I hope you have a Zoom name tag. If you need help, let us know in the chat. We'll help you out. If you aren't new to Accotink, look around. Do you see people you haven't met or spoken to in a while? These people like you. They want to meet you. Help us live up to our mission to be a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home for all by reaching out and making a connection. By visiting this congregation, newcomers are in a transition moment, and people in transitions are more open to new friendships. This means that your new best friend might be here this morning, and this is your chance to meet them before someone else does. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour, online and in person, immediately after this service. And as Rev said, we do have food, so we're so delighted you joined us today. Welcome.
All right. I'm going to try to tell you what's coming up in reverse order. So we're still in our month of welcome, but in October, we're going to be exploring heritage. So I encourage you to show up for that. I had a brief, asked my child this week, my 10-year-old, if they knew what heritage meant. And they had like a really perfect definition. So that was exciting for me. The week before that, we are not having an installation service. That's been postponed. But we are having a special guest preacher, the Reverend Patrice Curtis, who is a close friend of mine from seminary and also just a delight. And I'm very excited to offer you the opportunity to hear Patrice preach. And then next Sunday, we have our water communion. And we're going to do our backpack blessing. We're calling it Backpack Blessing 2.0 because not a lot of the children were here, and I didn't announce it well. So we're going to do that one again. So bring your water for water communion, that special Unitarian Universalist ceremony. And also bring your backpacks and your briefcases, your big purses. What suitcases? Yeah, whatever you want blessed, okay? And then that brings us to today. And I want to introduce Reverend Kenneth Nixon is here to preach our sermon. And also he brought food. So Reverend Nixon serves as the associate organizer for Voice, working primarily with congregations and organizations here in Fairfax County. He also serves as the social justice and outreach pastor at First Baptist Church of Manassas. And before becoming a full-time Voice organizer, he'd been active in Voice as a clergy leader for 10 years. And it also served on the voice strategy team. So it's good to know I have another option if I stick around for a decade when I move on from here. I'm not planning to move on from here. That's a joke. Reverend Nixon is also the author of the memoir Born into Crisis, which is the basis for today's message, where he'll explore the mental health crisis, resilience, and a call to reform for our system of support for mental health.
Good morning. So this morning, we're going to start by sharing a little from what we did last week in our spiritual development class. And we have Sarah up here to share. So I'm going to show you what we made, which was a welcome poster, a chalice welcome poster. So she's going to share a little bit about that experience.
I painted this picture because it represents how each person helps each other. The big fountain shares water with the smaller fountains, like we all share resources and kindness with each other.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. And then I have an honorable mention here. It's Anna, who shared with us last week. She's actually doing IT right now, so I thought I'd just go ahead and present this. Isn't it lovely? So this morning, we wanted to touch on mental wellness for children. And I came across the book entitled Ruby Finds a Worry by Tom Percival. Ruby is a happy, curious, imaginative young girl, but one day she finds something unexpected, a worry. This perceptive and poignant story is the perfect springboard for talking with children about emotions, anxieties, and the steps we can take, as Ruby does, to experience emotional well-being. Ruby finds out that a worry is a part of the Big Bright Feelings picture book series that act as sensitive and reassuring springboards for conversations about mental and emotional health. So let's find out what Ruby does whenever she finds a worry. Ruby Finds a Worry, written and illustrated by Tom Percival. Ruby loved being Ruby. She loved to swing up high. And she loved to explore wild, faraway places. Sometimes she even went all the way to the very bottom of the garden. Ruby was perfectly happy until one day she discovered a worry. It wasn't a very big worry. In fact, it was so small that at first Ruby hardly noticed it. But then the worry started to grow. Each day it got a little bigger. It just wouldn't leave her alone. It was there at breakfast, staring at her over the cereal box, and it was still there at night when she brushed her teeth. The funny thing was that no one else could see Ruby's worry, not even her teacher. So Ruby pretended that she couldn't see it either. She tried to carry on as if everything was normal, but it just wasn't. The worry was always there, stopping her from doing the things that she loved. Ruby wondered if the worry would ever go away. What if it didn't? What if it stayed with her forever? Ruby didn't realize it, but she was doing the worst thing you can ever do with a worry. She was worrying about it. Now the worry was enormous. It could barely fit in the kitchen at dinner time. It filled up half the school bus. And it took up whole rows at the movie theater. The worry became the only thing that Ruby could think about, and it seemed like she would never feel happy again. Then one day, something unexpected happened. Ruby noticed a boy sitting alone at the park. He looked how she felt, sad. And then she noticed something else, something hovering next to him. Could it be a worry? It was. Ruby realized that she wasn't the only person with a worry after all. Other people had them too. She asked the boy what was on his mind, and as he told her, the strangest thing happened. His worry began to shrink. Then Ruby did the best thing you can ever do if you have a worry. She talked about it. As the words tumbled out, Ruby's worry began to shrink until it was barely there at all. Soon, both of their worries were gone. Finally, Ruby felt like herself again. Of course, that wasn't the last time she ever had a worry. Everyone gets them from time to time. But now that she knew how to get rid of them, they never hung around for long.
I'm going to continue in a spirit of meditation. In a moment, we're going to sing I Know This Rose Will Open. I mentioned last week that we have a goal this church year to offer you music as a gift of our faith that can become alive in your heart, that can become so familiar that when you need it for inspiration or for solace, it will be there. So in a moment, we'll sing I Know This Rose Will Open, but we're going to begin with a version of the Tonglen meditation. We've explored this before. This is a Tibetan Buddhist form of meditation. We're going to connect it to this hymn. So the first line of the hymn says, I know this rose will open. So begin by breathing in and breathing out and connecting with that wisdom and love that knows that the rose will open. Sometimes I imagine that as Buddha when I can't actually imagine the rose opening myself. I just take solace knowing that somebody has been able to imagine it and that that spirit lives within me as well. So breathe in the knowing, the transformative heart within you that knows the rose will open even when it's hard to remember or to feel that. And then breathe in the fear or the sadness or the anger, but in the song it's the fear. And as it goes into that place of wisdom, know that it burns away, that can burn away the fear, and then you can breathe out the soul and the body unfurling its wings. So you're breathing in the fear, transformed by fire, and then you're breathing out the unfurling of wings. I just love that line. I can feel it in my body, the expansiveness, the release. So breathe in the constriction of the fear into that center of wisdom and breathe out release, liberation, expansion. And one more time before we sing, breathing in the fear, breathing out that expansion of the wings of our souls and our bodies unfurling.
Our reading today is an excerpt from the book Born into Crisis by the Reverend Kenneth Nixon. You can create the systemic change necessary to write your narrative. None of us control our beginning, but you do have a say in the conclusion. So what will your conclusion be? Your journey to creating the power to shift the world towards betterment starts with one relational conversation at a time. We are capable of so much more than we realize. Life will be filled with setbacks and disappointment. Systems and people will fail you. What is important is not your initial reactions in these moments, but what you do afterward. You always have a choice. to stay stuck in the trauma, or to use it as a catalyst for change. The world needs your light now more than ever, so shine bright, my friends. Never give up on yourselves or each other. Fight back.
Thank you. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm going to get into my Baptist voice and get a little loud here. Good morning. So grateful for the opportunity to be with you all again, and for my good friend and colleague, Reverend William Levewood, for giving me the opportunity to be here with you. So I'm going to be coming from the topic, which is more of a question. So what will your conclusion be? We all have a story, a beginning in this journey. And I know I have to stay behind this pulpit, so it's awkward because I like to move around. So I'm going to try to stay stationary so everyone can hear me on the Zoom. But all of us have a beginning. All of us have a story, a tapestry that is woven together with joys, with sorrows, with traumas. You're not here by any mistake. The path that led you to be here at this moment, there were decisions that were made through the course of your life that led you to be here at this moment. And I was watching, I'm forgetting the name of it now, but I promised my wife I'm going to force her to watch it too because I enjoy it. I'm a nerd for documentaries and things of that nature. We balance each other out. She watches my political documentaries and all that, and I watch Married to Medicine and some of the other reality shows that are out there. So we balance it out. But I was watching a documentary on Netflix, and it was a gentleman who was traveling the world to identify what he called. See, I'm already trying to move around, so let me try to stay here. There's where? You do? Is it this one? Okay. That was by accident. Okay. Testing. Can you hear me? All right, now I can move around. So it was a documentary on Netflix, and this gentleman was traveling the world trying to identify what he called as blue zones. These blue zones, someone's nodding their head, so you may have watched it. Am I correct? All right. Trying to identify blue zones where they have the high concentration of sanitarians, and trying to figure out what is making folks live this long, right? Like in America, I think it's like 1 for every 1,000, don't quote me there, but it's like 1 for every 1,000 people, there's a sanitarian. And in certain places in like Japan and other places in the world, it was like 1 for every 100. And it's very common in these places to find a husband and a wife sanitarian who are still gardening, still doing their burpees. At 100, still doing burpees. I hope I can still walk at 100. They're still doing burpees. Yeah. But they were looking at the lives that they were living. And some of these people had very, very rough beginnings. They've been through wars. They've been through famine. They've been through so many different lifestyles. So that maybe it's just the diet. Maybe it's the Mediterranean diet in Greece that is the reason so many Greeks live to be 100. Maybe it's just the rural or the pristine nature that people are living in certain islands in Japan. Well, maybe it's their faith and how they show reverence for their Sabbath and really take care of their mental well-being. They're trying to open Pandora's box. Why are there these blue zones of sanitarians, but here in America, we seem to be getting sicker and sicker? My friends, I would say, looking at that documentary, that it's not just the diet, it's not just the faith, it's not just their traditions, but they made some conscious decisions on what their conclusion would be and not necessarily their beginning. The circumstances we face, the things that we deal with, we always have a choice to begin to shift it towards what we want our world to be. And when we're talking about mental wellness, I was speaking with my wife the other day. I said, after I watched that documentary and then watched Married to Medicine, I said, one of the lessons I learned from that is maybe we don't take enough time to actually truly respect the Sabbath. In very simple terms, it's a day of rest. It's a day of rest. And when you go to those blue zones, because we have diets that go on, you can turn on your TV, every other commercial is about a diet or a supplement, something on TV. We have a culture that's centered around promoting exercise and diets and supplements. But there's also some other things about rest that we don't really focus on. So when we're talking about mental wellness, how many here actually take a day where you turn off all devices? You don't respond to text messages. You don't turn on the television. You just stay connected with your family, your spirit, and maybe nature. Raise your hand if you do any of that collectively. Oh, one. There we go. There's your example. Not all day. There's your example. I'm guilty of it. Most of the times, and I'm transparent, because when you're a preacher, you got to be transparent about things. That's how people grow. My wife will be talking to me. I'll be on my computer. Work would have been over, but for some reason, I always feel like there's more to done, or there's an email I didn't read, or something that I'm going to miss. And she's talking to me. I'm nodding. Did you hear what I said? Yeah. What'd I say? Are you really asking me what you said? I'm sitting here listening to you. Tell me what I said. I don't have a clue. What she said, because I was not present in the moment. And some of the simplest things we do or can do to promote our mental wellness, to foster a deeper level of connection, is to be present in the moment. You can't be present in the moment with your family if you're on your smartphone at the same time. You can't be present. Well, I won't be present in a couple hours because football season has started, so I'm going to be honest. Being transparent. I will be watching football. There we go. I will be watching football. But it is important to find those times when you are there. If you're watching a movie, put your phone away. If you're having a conversation, and it's not going to happen overnight. I'm still a work in progress. If you're having a conversation, be present in it. Because it's those moments where people feel, it not only helps with your mental wellness, but those who feel they're actually being listened to, that the person that they're talking to is present. It allows you to actually begin to be in a Sabbath. My challenge to you is to find a day where no one can get in contact with you. I know it sounds like an odd statement to say, but find a day where you kind of tune out the world and just be present. And it could be just for yourself, just to be present. Rest. It's okay to sleep into 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I won't be back to that until at least 15, 16 years. Somewhere around that, but what I'm hearing, once they get to college, you still don't get back to that, so But when you're talking about mental wellness, you can't take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. You can't focus on your family if you're distracted in those moments in which you should be connected. One of the things I've learned in my journey, growing up in an environment that wasn't ideal, was that those quiet moments when you're able to cry without distractions, where you're able to read or to meditate, not audiobooks. I know there's a reason that people have them to listen to them while they're driving, but there's something about turning pages and actually being able to take notes and reflect on what you're reading that helps. We're too busy. Think about that for a second. You may not think you are. We're too busy. The first step in helping yourself before we can collectively help others is to honestly take care of yourself. Take that time. If you call my family, because I've been intentional at least the last year, they would say I'm the worst person to try to text or call. It's true. Because I consciously decide when I'm going to reply and do things that fit within a schedule that allows me to disconnect. It's okay to disconnect and then reconnect. And when you come into sacred places like this, it should be a place of solace, a place of refuge. It should also be a place where you're able to actually disconnect from the worldly things that you dealt with during the week and spiritually ground yourself in the land and the space with each other. One of the things that I've found myself as a minister since COVID, and I know you're dealing with this as well as a lot of ministers are, is fighting against the pandemic of loneliness. There are a lot of people who are very good at smiling, very good at saying that they're okay, putting on a show. But when they go home, they're very lonely. Or they don't come out at all. One of our callings of this time is to reconnect with people. But that requires us to actually reach out and connect. Have that relational conversation. Not over Zoom. No offense, those attending via Zoom. If it's not possible, yes, Zoom, yes, a phone call, but grab a cup of coffee, do it in person. Our humanity is meant to be one of relationship and connection. And we've gotten away from that. And we can't be connected spiritually to one another if we're not being intentional in connecting humanity. So my charge to you is to think of a friend, an associate, a brother or sister, even an annoying neighbor. They should be loved too. Even if they don't cut their grass like everyone else in the neighborhood. But reach out to them. You may be the first conversation they've had in a while and you don't even realize it. It's those small things that we can do that heals us, that begins to heal others. And that's how, and I'm transitioning here, and that's how I got into the organizing work that we do. And if you have not seen the email, VOICE, for those who aren't aware, which is a long acronym, I tried to get them to change it, but I'm just one person. Virginians Organized. You get to deal with my personality a lot more, so. Virginians Organized for Interfaith Community Engagement. And when I say that, a lot of people go, why is it so long? I don't know. That's what it's named. Virginians Organized for Interfaith Community Engagement, or VOICE, which Accotink is one of the founding member institutions of VOICE. Progressive organization, and I'm framing this for a reason, because I like to tell folks, especially in the last couple of months, we had a July 9th assembly in Triangle, Virginia, where we had just short of 1,000 folks come out, and I would say 990 of them did not want to be there because of the keynote or the special guest that was there. But VOICE is one of the more justice-minded progressive organizations that can compel a pretty conservative Republican governor to show up on a Sunday afternoon in traffic, 3 p.m., at an historic African-American church where probably 98% of the people didn't vote for him, to make commitments around our issues. How do you get to that point? How do you get to that point? How do you get to the point where the budget, which finally passed, where VOICE secured $68 million to build crisis receiving centers throughout the Commonwealth? $68 million. Now, for the purist among us, we requested 84, so he fell short of that, that commitment. But that's $68 million. Let's break that down. $58 million of that is more than a $48 million increase over what they did last year, which was 7.5. Ongoing money last year to support these programs locally. Take a guess, how much ongoing money came from the state to local community services boards? Okay, $500,000. Who said zero? Somebody's been attending some VOICE meetings. Zero. Think about that for a second. With the health crisis that we're facing, not only in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but in this state, Virginia last year spent $0 to support crisis programs in our localities. Zero. This year and going forward, it's $58 million. And you're giving a round of applause, but y'all were a part of that work. Part of that collective, that sharing. Even though the governor didn't want to listen to Susie Porth when she tried to get him to stop speaking at the rally. She was diligent. He just went right along. She held up those signs. Time's up. Governor kept talking. But you all were a part of that work. But it started with conversations, meeting with those affected by this crisis. The educators, the teachers, the parents, grandparents. going to Richmond, meeting with the Commissioner of Health, creating a partnership with the Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police, with the Healthcare and Hospital Association, getting on a bus to go down to Durham, North Carolina to tour a state-of-the-art crisis receiving center. 2 years in the making to get the small incremental change that we see. We celebrated, but the crisis and the need is so great that when you look at this win, you're like, well, that doesn't even begin to address it. But then you also have to step back and say, but it's less of a need than what was present yesterday. Accotink, I want you all to continue. I know I don't see Christine Stunkert here, but she always says, remember the small but mighty. And she's referencing Accotink. We're small in number, but we're mighty when we come together. Your efforts from your congregation to change the paradigm, you're actually saving lives. Think about that for a second. These crisis receiving centers are alternatives to people being zip-tied to hospital gurneys in emergency rooms or in local incarceration. They're going straight to treatment. Law enforcement can take them there directly. Loved ones can drop their loved ones off there directly. Someone can go there under their own fruition. They're actually going to save lives. And we always talk about upstream versus downstream work, charity versus justice. Both are necessary. But your commitment to that upstream work along with downstream work is why you will be saving lives in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So give yourselves a round of applause. So I will conclude by saying this, and you know in the Baptist tradition, we say I'm wrapping up at least 6 times, but that usually takes... I'm about to bring it home and then 30 minutes go by. But I am really bringing it in. The work continues. The work continues. And not only your support that you have given as a member institution, but actually in your talent is going to be required because change requires a constant commitment on the ground. We still have to get the regulations fixed so that when people actually go to these facilities, they can actually get the treatment that they deserve. Because right now, as it stands, we will build these facilities, but how many people know that they can't have on-site medications right now because of Virginia licensing? So what's the use of it if people can't get treatment? So there's always another piece in the justice work to continue to do. We also are looking at the intersection of climate and housing and the Inflation Reduction Act. And how can we begin to shift the paradigm in the face of climate change to where we are making these homes weatherized, energy efficient, accessible, and affordable. But it requires you to be at the table having those conversations. It requires you now more than ever to commit. Because I can promise you, our number one issue as a faith community collectively, and we're starting to message this throughout Voice, and we have a gala that's coming up at the Wolf Trap December 14th where Eugene Robinson from the Washington Post, MSNBC, is going to be our keynote. And he's going to help us wrestle with increasing healthy engagement in our diverse democracy. Why? Because if we don't make sure we have a democracy at the end of 2024, none of this will matter. So I implore you to double down, to commit. You don't have to commit to a lot because you still need to have a Sabbath, a day of rest. But if, as I said in my book, if writing cards and mailing them and writing legislators is something that you can do, join that effort. If you love policy and don't mind going down to Richmond and mixing it up with legislators, join the effort. If you don't mind going to Panera early in the morning and having a cup of coffee with some folks and then having lunch to get those you know that would like this to be engaged and involved in the process, join that effort. None of us control how our journey started, but we do have a choice in the conclusion. And I simply ask that as a founding member of Voice, that you all have been an integral part in changing lives in the Commonwealth. Restoring driver's license to over 600,000 people in the Commonwealth who had their license suspended just because they couldn't afford court costs. Expanding pre-K classrooms. Getting the larceny level lifted from 200 to 1,000 so kids who make a mistake aren't stuck with a felony the rest of their life. Getting the most comprehensive eviction moratorium in the country during COVID. Getting over $300 million in relief during the foreclosure crisis in 2008. Securing a public defender's office in Northern Virginia for the largest county with the highest concentration of people of color in Prince William County. They've broken ground on what the state is calling a state-of-the-art crisis center, the first of its kind in the state, in Health Region 2 in Prince William County, securing money to expand the crisis services in Fairfax County. The list goes on and on and on. And I said I was done like 5 minutes ago, didn't I? See? I warned you. But I thank you. May all that is present and holy and divine continue to dwell with your spirit and give you the space to decide how you are going to determine your conclusion. My son's conclusion is he's ready to go. Always entertaining. But those who are vulnerable, our democracy can't afford for you not to be engaged in some way. And I ask you find out what your way is and do it. Do it for future generations, but do it to edify your spirit and to help shape a proper conclusion. Be blessed.
As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you now to join me in our community blessing with the words of David Bumbaugh. And join hands if you feel called to. If you don't want to, it's fine. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all of our differences and beneath all of our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.
So now that we've been nourished and nurtured by this welcoming and inclusive community, may we go out into the world to live our values and share our values.